That was great.
Pulling some text message dings.
Yeah, are you spamming my? That's spamming my data.
Your system, since your system audio is going through Zoom, your text things are going
yes,
off.
Yeah, they're going off. Yeah,
I realized that. I was like, all right, let's make part of that.
I'm like, all right, I love that. Great, that's great.
So Nick, do you want to text message things? I realized.
Yeah, are you spamming my?
We say that again, Eric.
That's spamming my data.
Oh, I just realized that your stream. Sorry, I'm looking up I've got 50 messages toning out.
Yeah, right.
So I have to scroll.
Yes, they're going off.
The live stream video that you posted was
I'm like, I love that.
you said
great.
There's gonna be a little bit of. So Nick talked about setup, so I didn't know if you wanted to maybe do that.
Oh yeah, you want to talk about setup? Yeah.
Are you spamming my?
We say that again.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, I just realized that your stream. Sorry, I'm looking up
Yeah, go for explain how we did what we did. Yeah, right.
I think the YouTube audio
yes,
is coming through.
they're going off.
The live stream video.
Oh yeah, whose is that?
Not mine. I don't have it open.
Is that me?
So Nick talked about setup.
It's here.
Oh wow, cool.
V cool.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about some setup. So, we're all building off this Collab-Hub Node.js server, right? And all of us are using some root patching that allows us to make this all happen. And so, if someone is just now getting started with this thing, they should just first navigate to Collab-Hub. I'm going to try to throw up this link if I'm able to do that. Let's see. Collab-Hub.io. And so if you're going there, then it should take you to... let me see if I can pull up my screen. That way it's probably most easy. Pull this guy over here. Collab-Hub.io. And it should take you straight to our GitHub. Let me make this guy big. Cool. And from there, you should be able to fork or download the repo. And there's a bunch of links that you can follow to help you get started. But in the end, there's some demo patches. And there's a monster patch that you get talked through in the following links here. And if it's hard to understand, that's my fault. I wrote this fairly quickly, and I intend to clean this all up. But at the heart of it is the first working version that we're using is through Macs, and we have some demonstrations set up on how you can request and send data. And what Eric was doing was trying to streamline that process in that if someone is sending data, you can easily get that set up and send it over to your audio patch or your Bendit IO patch, sorts of things like that. So maybe, Eric, you can talk about what you are working on.
Sure. let me see if I can share my screen. I think, Tony, this might kill your screen share.
That's cool.
Desktop. Share. All right, you guys seeing my stuff now? Cool. Oh, and we can still hear Tony. That's good. All right, so what I made was it was sort of like there was an envision in my head of like how this would work, which is like as you decide who you want to receive data from, what kind of data you want, and like which label of theirs, like which data header you're going to receive from them. And I started with that thought of like, oh, cool, I'll just use like the JS object in Max to like automatically throw up the UI devices necessary for that. But then the more I looked at the stuff it could already done, I realized I'm sort of recreating things that are already here. So for now, you can see this window. There's like 4 versions of the easy receiver, which I just do every time I want to get a channel or something from someone. So obviously this is just kind of the start of something like this, where you can decide, which of the available controls you want to pull in, and that's actually pretty much it. You just decide which control you want to pull from someone, and it sends it out this outlet. So some streamlined version of this, I think, would be a nice step. And maybe what we want to talk about more is be standardizing, like especially if what do you call it? Especially if Bendit IO starts to come into the fold. It probably makes sense to standardize like which headers we're using and the value ranges, right? Because you have things that are programmed onto the board already that are part of the Bendit library, I guess. That would make sense for you to get.
Yeah, my thought would be to make a Bendit Max API, right? So that you could, as a client script, and that it would take in either just the same stuff or very similar stuff to what you would do in the Bendit browser, which is the API for making a web interface for communicating with Bendit IO devices. But it could also take in the Collab-Hub stuff. So if it gets one in, it would be, okay, this is a Bendit, standard Bendit browser sort of thing, or is this a Collab-Hub header? But yeah, that'd be great for us to start working on some of the stuff that like the universal side of stuff.
That seems like where this repo goes next is like standardizing the messages that are sent and received, and then providing that in a format that's easy to, like if you do have that set up as a Max toolkit, then it's just built right into the receivers and transmitters, like those easy receiver transmitter things that I made today. Like some version of that's just like, oh, what I want is this message formatted for the Bendit, and then it'll come out the output. Right, yeah, some kind of header right at the top or something that's like, how do you want to format this? And then, so that way you can be Collab-Hub, and if you easily wanted to jump over and start controlling something on the Bendit server, then you could just say, oh, this one, formatted for Bendit, and have, map it to this, like a toggle, this particular switch on this device, or something like that. Yeah, that'd be great. Or to run a motor or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, Eric.
I think that's...
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's one of the things that you've been working really hard on, Nick, and I think all 3 of us, actually, our research all kind of focuses on finding ways to make the network's elements and all the different kind of things that come with it, like naming conventions, and how do you simplify things to a point where it becomes a much easier and quicker to get up and running tool.
Definitely. Now that we have like this underlying part where we can send and receive stuff, the next step, like we've all been saying, is definitely standardizing it and making it easy for someone to just hop in here and get it going. I know that Tony is working on something similar like I am. Eric, can you pull up... Oh, no, never mind. It's not ready yet. I'm working on also a web page that you can pull up either on your mobile or desktop, where you can have buttons and sliders and rename headers and events so that you can use the web interface as a controller as well.
I think there's something to be, so you were talking about renaming things in the web interface, but maybe there's some, like the web interface maybe should just be like slider 1 through 10. It's up to you on the receiving end to decide like what's the meaning of that data, right?
Yeah.
that's the part that just seems to like now there's so much potential and there's so much the way that you have it set up on the server side of things is like it can take all kinds of messages named all kinds of things. And then the challenge is that when we're all together, like our setup of like, okay, you send me a pitch 1 and you send me a pitch 2, and like, that's the part that's like maybe that's what we could streamline is you can decide on, I don't know, that's a huge part of what design is of like this thing here is 8 sliders, right? And 8 knobs. And that's a big part of how people can get into things is they're presented with 8 sliders and knobs instead of, okay, what does that make sense? Like a lot of it is designing.
Right, yeah. And there's a universality too with something like a slider or a knob, right? And then whenever you decide to name it after the fact or something for what it represents.
Right.
That's kind of what I've been doing with the Bendit API too, is kind of saying like, okay, at the underlying thing, like the command, so to say you're sending to your board, to your circuit event device, it's like this switch is going to flip, or it's going to toggle, or it's going to set it to a specific open or closed message. And then if you want to reassign that to something really specific to what you're doing, like play pause button is this switch. So you can then say play pause button dot set open or toggle. And then you can keep going through these levels of abstraction, right? So you can be more specific to what you're doing, but the underlying thing is specific to the action.
Right.
It's like the idea of putting tape over that controller, Eric, right? For one show where you're like, slider 1 is actually gain controller, and slider 2 is actually delay time. And then that tape comes off, and it gets reset for each performance. So to have something, too, where the Collab-Hub stuff can quickly be reset up. So this value is now specifically for pitch. And whether that goes right to a looper or whether that goes right to the Bendit API, so to say, and like, oh, that pitch actually is controlling potentiometer value 3.
Or Nick, maybe that could be part of the Collab-Hub API. I guess is that you can assign nicknames to things, and that can be part of what you receive with that. Is someone's a web page, slide 1. It's always going to send slider 1 so that the receiving patches know how to interpret it, but maybe like the user can still say like slider 1 is this thing, and that nickname gets sent along with it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so like
that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I think that like that's an interesting point because like that makes it much more easier to use, and it doesn't necessarily interface so much with Collab-Hub itself, but like it helps the user interpret what that information means to them on their own machine.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that was beautiful to bring it up. Yeah, exactly. Wrapper completely around whatever it's doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, am I good?
Oh, we lost you for a second. I lost you for a second. Maybe it's.
Oh yeah, I was just saying like if Collab-Hub can be like last level of a wrapper around whatever you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be pretty cool. And to continue to make it as easy as it's been, even easier to kind of be like, value's coming in, what is that value, and then how can you easily send that value to whatever you're working on, and it just and then easily be able to be like, hey, I renamed to this maybe, and send it back to your partners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's that's definitely one of the trickiest things about networking, I think, is just making the naming conventions all the same. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think all of us in some way, shape, or form in our research are like, how do we simplify that? Because by the time you make the client send the message to the server and then on to where it's going, you're doing that like 2 or 3 times. If the convention isn't followed the same way, or the way naming things aren't the same, it doesn't work. So
it's also hard to know if somebody wants to send. If I like, maybe there are times where I want to send something only to Tony. Let's say we have slider 2, right? Let's say there's a slider 2 value, and Nick's got slider 2, and I've got a slider 2. My slider 2 needs to go to Tony, and Nick's slider 2 needs to go to me. Something like that. There's definitely like, how do you make sure that people aren't using the same channel's the wrong word, just label, there could be some overlap there.
Yeah,
that's one thing that with like the web interface, I guess, having some way to ID the user, because each time someone would load the web page, would they be on as a unique user, Nick?
They could be. Right now it's not set that way, but you could set it that way.
Yeah, because I know like right now when we load it in Max, like we're all different users,
Mm-hmm.
and we can put in our username.
Right.
But on the other end, I can't like filter all my messages by only things from Tony.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. That's something I need to add into the next part of Bend It is to be able to set at the interface maybe if you want to be called a specific nickname versus the socket. Right now, it's really just categorizing it all by the socket ID.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it does something different where the server can tell what's a Bend It board connected to a circuitbent device versus what's a web client, because the boards send a special handshake, you know, that the other clients don't. So you can easily say, well, this is the Bend It device, and it's going to receive a message maybe that only they can receive versus what the clients can receive. But to be able to nickname a client, be like, hey, I got a message, and I got it specifically from Eric's webpage, you know, and to be able to change that on the fly. Because right now you kind of do it when you make the interface. You just make it like only Eric talks to this device and Nick talks to that VHF player. But to be able to change that instantly on the interface, that that's not hard to do. But it's just something that I haven't.
So next time we do this, Nick, we should at least for net. Well, you have a pro or not a pro, a paid Zoom account too, right?
Yeah.
Because there's like you can stream to anywhere, and you just have to have the stream key URL. I tried it out actually because I don't have a Facebook account. A concert to the school's Facebook music department page next week, and I could just enter in the stream key and send the Zoom feed to that. So we could do that for YouTube. There's a way to do it, I guess. As like a custom stream. And I didn't realize that only one of us could share our audio stream. So
how did you fix that?
I ended up making an aggregate device with Black Hole. So I think that should be our default. Is that Zoom I think is still worth using because you can turn off all audio processing for the stream, but you still have to use some aggregate device of some kind so that your MAT output goes both to your headphones and to Zoom. Whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think the way that I'm using it is I have a mixer that I'm able to switch things around. I'm not using Black Hole, but
you're just like routing stuff back in, aren't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which for you being the one who's like actually streaming to, that's a good point. Because you're getting everything in and streaming out again from OBS, and you should be the person who's. Anyway, this worked. Whatever. We'll just be smarter about the audio settings next time. But this worked, I think.
Yeah.
I haven't made dinner yet. I'm gonna go here in a second so I can make some dinner.
Okay.
Dude, it's 9:17 Southern New York time.
I'm gonna make some late night carbonara.
Nice.
You can take the boy out of the Eastern time zone. I take the Eastern time zone. That 1 hour addition.
You guys want Saturday next time?
Sure.
Let's do Saturday next time.
Great.
Yeah.
Same time, 8 o'clock my time, 7 your time.
Yeah, I like that.
Sounds good. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's good to see you guys.
Later, y'all. Peace.
See ya.